Okay, welcome back. We're on deck. Prep test 85. We're going to start here, section 3, question number 16. And again, you should generally expect that as we move into the higher number, the questions that are assigned higher numbers, there's going to be an increased level of difficulty. So, have a plan. Which one of the following is most strongly supported by the information above? Okay, what's the information? Again, read textually. Wood that is waterlogged or desiccated can be preserved for a significant period, but under normal circumstances, wood usually disintegrates within a century or two. So that's my first fact, which is when wood is waterlogged or desiccated, it can hang around a while, but when not, then century two and it's gone. For this reason, so stop for this reason. For the reason that wood disintegrates after a couple of centuries unless it's waterlogged or desiccated, for that reason, archaeologists have been unable to find many remains of early wheeled vehicles to examine. So that implies that the early wheeled vehicles were made from wood. Because you're saying for that reason, right? So, okay. And that would make sense. So archaeologists have been unable to find many remains. Sure. You'd only find remains of the vehicles where the wood had been waterlogged or desiccated. However, archaeologists have found small ceramic models of wheeled vehicles made at approximately the same time as those early vehicles. So stop for a second. Okay, so what we do have are models, and the models are ceramics, right? And the models are models of the wood-wheeled vehicles that we no longer have. Okay, so now I'm looking at my model. Since these models have been much less susceptible to disintegration than the vehicles themselves, the main evidence regarding early wheeled vehicle has come from these models. So that's the conclusion. The main evidence regarding these early wheeled vehicles has come from these models. This could so be such an assumption issue, because it must be the case that the ceramics, which are based on the wood vehicle, are reflective of a wood vehicle. So this end here, that the main evidence regarding the early wheeled vehicles, well, the early wheeled vehicles they're referring to are wood-wheeled vehicles, has come from the models. And therefore, the ceramic you're looking at had to reflect a type of material, which was wood. And if it didn't, then it's not going to follow. Okay, so let's see what we have here. A says most of the small ceramic models of early wheeled vehicles were made by the very individuals who made the vehicle upon which the ceramic vehicle were modeled. No. B, few, if any, small models of early wheeled vehicles were made of wood or other materials equally susceptible to disintegration under normal conditions. Well, few, if any, small models, so you're looking at the model, right, of the early wheeled vehicle were made of wood or other materials. I don't know, because that's not saying the models are models we presently have, so that may be completely false. Or there could be lots of them that were made of wood and they simply disintegrated. C, the individuals who made the early wheeled vehicles were not always aware that the wood can be preserved through waterlogging or desiccation. I imagine that's accurate. I imagine they weren't aware, but that's not what is most strongly supported by this. This is not a bunch of facts about awareness. It's a bunch of facts about that model. Is really it's really tied to the wood, the vehicle that was made of wood. D, an artifact will be more difficult for archaeologists to find if it has been preserved through waterlogging or desiccation than if it has been preserved under normal conditions. You would find an artifact would be more difficult for archaeologists to find. I'm not quite sure why that would follow. I guess you could say, well, there'd be fewer of them or something, but it wouldn't be more difficult to find. They'd be there. So I don't think that's the answer. E. Of the early wheeled vehicles not preserved, okay, we don't have them, so we're now relying on the model. More were made of wood, than were made of materials no more susceptible to disintegration than are the ceramic items. Ceramic items. Yeah, I think that's the case. Yeah, well, it's the case. What he's saying is, okay, so we're talking about the ones that are not preserved, which means we're relying exclusively on the ceramic model. So we have the ceramic model, and if you're going to rely on that as evidence of, right, that it was wood, well, then you're relying that it wasn't evidence of something else that itself has disintegrated. So maybe it wasn't on wood, maybe it was, I'm making this up, but maybe it was on a rubber, and the rubber would have disintegrated, but the model was based on rubber, it wasn't based on wood. So it does follow from this that of the early wheeled vehicles not preserved, more were made of wood than were made of materials no more susceptible to disintegration than are the ceramic items. So the answer there is E. And again, it's not easy stuff, that's for sure. Question number 17. They want which of the following is an assumption required for the argument. Okay, let's see what we have here. Traditional hatcheries raise fish in a featureless environment and subject them to dull routines, whereas new experimental hatcheries raise fish in visually stimulating environment with varied routines. So I got it. I got the two different ways to raise fish in hatcheries. When released into the wild, fish from the experimental hatcheries are bolder than those from traditional hatcheries in exploring new environments and trying new types of food. See, stop. Okay, so the fish that come out of the experimental environments are more aggressive or bolder in two respects. One, in exploring their environment, and two, in trying new types of food. Next sentence. Fish raised in the experimental hatcheries, therefore, are more likely to survive. So that's the conclusion, that they're more likely to survive. Okay. So we want to connect, because the argument's conclusion is they're more likely to survive, and we want to connect that to something previously stated in the argument. So you would infer from, I would infer from that they're more likely to survive because survival is connected with exploring a new environment, and or survival is connected with trying new types of food. So let's see what we have here. A, it is economically feasible for hatchery operators to expose fish to greater visual stimulation and to more varied routines. It's not about whether it's economically feasible. Whether it's economically feasible or not, nobody said it had to be economically feasible. That's bringing the real world into this, which is not what you do. This didn't say economically successful hatcheries. So it doesn't have to be the case. It's economically feasible. B, the quality of the environment into which hatchery raised fish are released has little effect on a fish's survival rate. Well, that contradicts the argument. C, some fish raised in traditional hatcheries die because they are too timid in their foraging for food. That's going to be the answer. Yeah, that's an assumption. That needs to be true for this conclusion to be valid. That was the advantage of the experimental hatchery. We'll keep reading. D, hatchery-raised fish that are released into the wild need to eat many different types of foods to survive. That doesn't have to be true, that they need many different types of fish. And E, fish in the wild always live in visually stimulating environments, and that certainly does not have to be true. So the answer to number 17 is C for Caligula. Let's take a look at question number 18. The reasoning in the argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the ground that the argument overlooks. So I'm looking for a flaw. And what do we have here? There's an analyst of the language, an analysis of the language in social media messages posted via the internet determined that on average, the use of words associated with positive moods is common in the morning, decreases gradually to a low point in the afternoon, and then increases sharply throughout the evening. Stop. Okay, I get it. So, words associated with positive moods are strong in the morning, decrease to a low point mid-afternoon, and then increasingly sharply throughout the evening. And here's the conclusion. So you're going to pay attention to the conclusion. This shows that a person's mood typically starts out happy in the morning, declines during the day, and improves in the evening. So you're zeroing in on the conclusion. And the conclusion here is that if you're going to conclude that a person's mood typically starts out happy, declines, and improves, then you have to establish that that person was present in the morning, present in the afternoon, and present in the evening. Got it. So that's all done. Now let me look at the answer choices. A. People's overall moods are lowest at the beginning of the work week and rise later, peaking on the weekend. That's got zero to do with the conclusion here. B. Many people who post social media messages use neither words associated with positive moods nor words associated with negative moods. Well, those folks then wouldn't impact this. I mean, they wouldn't be in this. We're talking here about words that are associated with positive moods, words that are associated with negative moods. So we're not really talking about words that are not. C. The frequency and the use of words in social media is not necessarily indicative of the frequency of the use of those words in other forms of communication. Who cares? This is about what takes place in social media. D. The number of social media messages posted in the morning is not significantly different from the number posted in the evening. It's not about the number. It's the average. Remember, you're talking about the average, right? So the average adjusts with higher or lower numbers. So it's not about the number of people. It's about there's got to be a consistency to that you're following the same person morning, afternoon, and evening. And E. Most of the social media messages posted in the evening are posted by people who rarely post such messages in the morning, and that would be that's the flaw. That the folks who are showing up in the evening don't post in the morning, so you don't have the you don't know that the person who was happy in the morning is still happy in the evening because it's not the same person. So definitely 18, the answer is E for Euphrates, and we'll hold it there.